friends.
Good evening.
So good to see you all today. Thank you very much for joining us. So did you all see the supermoon last night? Yeah, you went to the special moon viewing party. That's
Yes.
nice. It's really amazing, isn't it? Just to see it in its full splendor right in front of you, biggest it is. As beautiful as it is, sometimes we forget just how important the moon is towards life on Earth for us here, what its role is. Without the moon, of course, there wouldn't be any tidal movement in the oceans, and that, of course, affects a lot of ocean life. There wouldn't be real seasons, at least stable seasons like we have now. And think about that. If there's no seasons, of course, the periods of growth and so forth are affected by that. We wouldn't have the beautiful lotuses blossoming. And it has a very important role because of its gravitational pull on the Earth and the way it stabilizes the axis of the Earth. So it's important things to think about sometimes. Even though the moon is so far away, it still has such an integral role, right, in sustaining life here on Earth. So it's something to always be aware of and appreciate, even the cosmos and how everything in this whole universe is interrelated. Well, the moon is also very important in Buddhism. There are special days in Buddhism called Uposatha. Have you heard of these days before? Uposatha? Yeah. Well, these are Buddhist days of observance that are related to 4 phases of the moon. So we're talking about the new moon, the full moon, and the 2 quarter moons in between. And the Buddha taught that these days were for a special type of cleansing of the defiled mind, resulting in inner calm and joy. Now, on these days, the disciples intensify their practice. They deepen their knowledge and their commitment to the Dharma. So these are very special days to be aware, right? Raise awareness, a kind of reminder of what they are seeking, ultimately, to become Buddhas. Now, coincidentally, yesterday coincided with Vaishak. Vaishak is really the most sacred of Buddhist holidays for many Buddhists around the world, especially Buddhists in South Asia and Southeast Asia. This is a time where all the Buddha's life is celebrated. Now here in Risho Kosei-kai, we celebrate different days, on different days, the Buddha's birth, the Buddha's enlightenment, and his nirvana. But in Vaishak, especially in South Asia, it's all celebrated at one period of time, all at once. And so it's a very special time to celebrate, as I said, the Buddha's life and his teachings. Well, yesterday I attended the Vaishak service that was being held at the Unity Church across the street. And I was so happy to be a part of this and so full of joy to see so many people who are really genuinely appreciative of the Buddha and his teachings. And they're trying to listen to the wonderful, wise words that were being expressed by different Buddhist teachers and scholars. And so I thought it was really wonderful because it's days like these, just like the Buddha's birthday that we had recently, that we're reminded of the great example of the virtuous conduct of the Buddha. And beyond that, we're reminded of what our purpose is, to try to embody the same spirit, to be the Buddha. The Buddha always said that anyone could be like him, fully awakened. What it takes, though, is diligent practice and the wish to liberate others. That was his ultimate vow, the wish to help others. And it takes a long time too. So patience. So some of us have probably been practicing Buddhism for some time now, and I'm sure you've been able to observe the changes within yourselves. Your perspective changes, your speech changes, your habits, your awareness, your whole being, your whole nature, it changes. And why is that? It's because Buddhism has a transformative power. It does. Now just by saying that we're Buddhists isn't going to lead us to that transformation though. Just like anything else, it takes practice. If, for example, I want to get all built and, get a six-pack. Is it going to happen if I walk for 10 minutes every 3 days? Probably not. I think, not enough commitment to it. You're not going to see real changes with just that half-hearted effort, right? What if I want to master the piano, but maybe I practice 30 minutes every 2 weeks? Is that going to turn me into a virtuoso? I don't think so. It takes time. It takes effort. It takes a lot of commitment, right? And so, the same thing goes with Buddhism, right? To really transform ourselves, to become a Buddha, we have to act like a Buddha. Now I know also many of us are new into Buddhism, and so with such a great example as the Buddha, saying I want to act like the Buddha, but he's so great, he's so far away in a way as far as a role model. It's hard for me to relate with the Buddha sometimes, right? You may feel that way. And so where do we start? How do we start on this path? Well, fortunately, we have the guide. And it's right in the back of our kyotens. So we just recited the member's vow. Have you all memorized the member's vow yet? Good. Yeah. It's a good thing to memorize. But even if you don't, what's wonderful is it's there. And during our daily practice, we can recite it. Right? This is our daily reminder of how to practice. Now I want to go through each part of the member's vow. Really look at what is it really saying. It's only 79 words. Okay? Only 79 words. But these words are very profound. Let's start at the very beginning. Okay? We members of Risho Kosei-kai take refuge in the eternal Buddha Shakyamuni. Eternal Buddha Shakyamuni is whom we take refuge in. It says it very clearly, right at the very beginning. Right? What is our focus of devotion? Our focus of devotion is the eternal Buddha Shakyamuni. Okay? So we want to make that very clear right up front. The eternal Buddha Shakyamuni. Who it's not is the historic Buddha Shakyamuni, whose Vaishak we celebrate yesterday. Of course, the Buddha himself was a wonderful example for us. He's the one who brought us the teachings. But the Buddha never wanted himself to be venerated. Right? He always wanted us to venerate the teachings. The teachings. Look through the Buddha and see the Dharma. That's why it's often called the Buddha Dharma. It's one and the same. Okay? So, what is the difference then between Shakyamuni Buddha and the eternal Buddha Shakyamuni? Well, the eternal Buddha Shakyamuni is much more of a concept. There's no form in reality to the eternal Buddha. The eternal Buddha is the Dharma itself, right? It's in all things. It's another name is the universal life force, the universal life energy, that which sustains us, right? So we have an image of this eternal Buddha, Shakyamuni, right? Shakyamuni is at the center. However, as I mentioned, it really doesn't have, there really isn't a form. We have an image because we as humans need that. We need to see something, right? And what we see is Shakyamuni's example. He was the example of that eternal Buddha being manifested in this world. But the reality is, it exists in all things. It exists in you, and in you, and in me. We all have that eternal Buddha present within us. Okay? And so that's really what we are venerating, okay, when we say the eternal Buddha, Shakyamuni. So through this, we're recognizing this is what we take refuge in. The three treasures. This is taking refuge in the Buddha. And after that, we say, and recognize in Buddhism a true way of liberation. Recognize in Buddhism a true way of liberation. Okay? So, Buddhism is where we're led to here. Buddhism, what is Buddhism? Buddhism is the teachings of Shakyamuni Buddha, right? So the Dharma itself, right? The truth. Recognizing in that we can become liberated. So there's a belief, right? A belief that as I practice the Dharma, I can overcome my sufferings, right? Just like the Buddha did. As I said, the Buddha gave us the example. He lived this. So all I have to do is follow the same path that the Buddha walked, and I too can become a Buddha. Right? So this is very important. Right? We find a way out of suffering and into joy through my belief, the practice of the Dharma. Right? Focus on the Dharma. So this is taking refuge in the Dharma. The next part is under the guidance of our revered founder, Nikkyo Niwano, in the spirit of lay Buddhists, we vow to perfect ourselves. Under the guidance of a revered founder, Nikkyo Niwano. Right. So, what is our founder's role in all of this? Well, first of all, we have to understand that the Lotus Sutra, as it is an old text. It's an old sutra that was compiled thousands of years ago. And so, over time, it changes. Not really it changes, but it gets lost over time. Some teachers have had a wonderful way of spreading it, but then over time it starts to fade, and then it reemerges, and then it fades again. So, for a long period, the Lotus Sutra was really relegated to the monks, right? It was relegated to people who could really understand it, because the Lotus Sutra is not an easy thing to read. It's 370 pages or so. So it's not an easy concept either. Very difficult words, very difficult ideas in there. So not everybody can really grasp it. So like I said, for a long period of time, no one was really practicing, or not at least the regular people, the lay people. And so we can say that the founder was very influential in bringing the Lotus Sutra to us, to the everyday person. Before him, Nichiren did that. He was able to reach out to the everyday person. And then once again, with our founder, it was resurrected once more during a time of need. And so the founder himself, when he first realized Lotus Sutra, he was taught Lotus Sutra to him. He was so moved by this. He said, "This is the teaching that's going to help liberate everyone." He knew that. He knew how significant it was. And so, from that point on, committed his whole life to spreading the Dharma, spreading the Lotus Sutra. He believed that it could liberate people 100% of the time. And so with his commitment, with his passion, he started Risho Kosei-kai. And because of that, it has led to this this wonderful organization which is always trying to help people overcome their sufferings and enter a life of joy. But his compassion was even deeper than that, because he didn't just look at Japan, right? It's an island, a small island, right? And it's easy to just say, well, this is Japanese Buddhism, or this is just for Japan, but he could see beyond the scope of just Japan and realize that it's not a Japanese religion, this is a world religion, and it has to be manifested throughout the world. And so because of that, we're so fortunate we now have a place to practice here in the United States, where we can receive the Dharma in English, right? And we can understand it and build a community. It's wonderful. It's so wonderful. So because of that, we have to always honor and revere our founder, our co-founder, right, for their great efforts. Offer our appreciation to them. For without them, who knows, the Lotus Sutra may still be somewhat lost. It may not have found its way here. So, that is our founder. The next part is, in the spirit of lay Buddhists, we vow to perfect ourselves. Now this is the one point in this vow where the word vow is actually explicitly expressed. We vow to perfect ourselves in the spirit of Buddhists. What is the spirit of Buddhists? Of lay Buddhists, I'm sorry. What's the spirit of lay Buddhists?
Interacting with other people.
Mm-hmm. That's right. That's right. So we're not secluded from others. We're part of society as lay Buddhists. The spirit of lay Buddhists is recognizing that the Dharma works in our daily lives, anywhere, wherever we are, at work, at school, right, at home, wherever we are, we can practice the Dharma. But more importantly, it's talking about a collective idea here, that we're working together as lay Buddhists. So in our relationships with one another, we are striving to perfect ourselves. Remember, this is the meaning of Kosei in Risho Kosei-kai, is the idea that we are working together to perfect ourselves. It can't be done on my own. I can't do it just by myself. I need the interaction with the others in order to overcome my sufferings and to become one with the Dharma. So that's very important. The vow to perfect myself. It's not just, like I said, being in kind of a social club, right? Just so we have fun all the time. But there has to be a vow there too, to cultivate myself, to make myself a better person, right? To make others better. That's my wish. That's our wish. So we can say that in this statement here, it's also saying we take refuge in the Sangha. So we've already seen, up until this point, taking refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha being represented here in our members' vow. The next part is through personal discipline and leading others, and by improving our knowledge and practice of the faith. Personal discipline. For us, what is personal discipline? Sutra recitation. Right, exactly. Sutra recitation. We have to discipline ourselves, right? We have other practices, but most important of our daily practice is reciting the sutra. Right? This is where we communicate with the Buddha. Right? This is where we calm ourselves, reflect upon ourselves, introspect ourselves. Think about our relationships with others. Have they been good? Have they been bad? How can I change it? I repent. These are things that I can focus on through my sutra recitation. And also listen to the words. Through reading the words aloud, I'm listening also, as if the Buddha is speaking to me. In that way, the Buddha is guiding me. I'm recalling these wonderful teachings. They're always with me. So that's personal discipline, right? And the discipline is twice a day. Right? That's our guidance from our founder. Twice a day we try to recite. In this way we are slowly cultivating ourselves, letting go of our attachments, becoming more and more committed to the path. So that's the personal discipline. Leading others. Leading others. Well, this is from here, right? This section here. Personal discipline, leading others, and improving our knowledge and practice of the faith. These are the three basic practices of Risho Kosei-kai. Okay. First, sutra recitation. Second is what we call Hoza Michibiki Tedori. Okay. So Hoza, of course we know Hoza well. We always practice Hoza here every Sunday. And this is a wonderful way for us to share the Dharma, listen to each other's sufferings or joys, and try to help one another see these our personal experiences in the light of the Dharma. So that's Hoza. But Michibiki and Tedori is actually reaching out to other people, reaching out to people in our Sangha and even people outside of our Sangha, right? To try to get them to hear the Dharma, connect with the Dharma, and hopefully overcome their own sufferings and build joy and create a strong, warm, and bright Sangha. That's our intention. And so that's one of our major practices in Risho Kosei-kai. Right? And then the last one, improving our knowledge and practice of the faith. This is study. Right? Study, understanding the Dharma. Risho Kosei-kai is not about blind faith, just accepting it because the Buddha said so. That's nonsense. We have to understand it, look at it closely, try to analyze it, and then put it into practice and see if it works. And if it does, well then let's believe it and let's keep up with it. If it doesn't, well then you don't need it. But it really comes to how much do we understand what we're doing? Right? Do we really understand? So to really understand, we have to read. We have to talk with each other, right? Listen, share with each other, and come to a grasp of the Dharma. So knowledge is very important, right? That's why we have our Lotus Sutra study, so we can grasp it. And from next month, we're going to start a more of a elaborate type of Dharma study. So we'll be doing a variety of different things, not just the Lotus Sutra, but looking at the Dharma as a whole in different ways. And so hopefully this will help us gain a further really understanding what the Dharma is about. So these are the basic practices here, expressed here towards the end of the member's vow. And then it finishes off with this. We pledge ourselves to follow the Bodhisattva way, to bring peace to our families, communities, and countries into the world. Pledge ourselves to follow the Bodhisattva way. This is a tradition, this Risho Kosei-kai is a tradition based on the Mahayana spirit. But even beyond that, this idea of ekaya, one vehicle. But ultimately in the Lotus Sutra, it teaches that we have to practice as bodhisattvas in order to really get to the level of becoming a Buddha. We have to practice as bodhisattvas. It says it in chapter 2, the Buddha only teach bodhisattvas. That doesn't mean that he doesn't teach those who are just starting up on the path, not necessarily thinking they're bodhisattvas, but to really understand the Buddha's teachings, we have to be practicing as bodhisattvas. That's what he means. So, the bodhisattva practice is, of course, not just thinking about my own selfish wishes, but thinking about others, thinking about their benefits, just as important as my own. So, it's a mutual practice. As I listen to somebody else's suffering, I myself am benefiting. And as I share, they benefit. In this way, we are cultivating one another. So this is the practice that we take on and we challenge in our daily lives. Right? And it can be done anywhere, not just here in the Hosa or in our interactions with the Sangha. It can be outside, in the grocery stores, right? Within our families, at school, wherever we are, we can practice the Bodhisattva way. And that's very important. So this is a way of really letting go of our egos. Especially in this lay society. We're not monks. So we are going to see a lot more of materialism. We're going to see a lot more of egocentric thinking, right? This is a reality. How do we handle it? How do we deal with it? How can we show our compassion for others? This is the challenge of the Bodhisattva way. And what we learn, though, as we practice the Bodhisattva way, it has an effect on those around us. Starting with the family. We were talking about last Thursday about the story of King Resplendent, right, and his family. And we mentioned how hard it is to relate the Dharma with those who are closest to us, right? That's so hard. They see you every day. So these are the things that we have to practice on. So I can't just pretend I'm going to be a bodhisattva only outside of my house. I have to be a bodhisattva within my house. In fact, that's the most important, creating harmony within my family. Right? So when we are able to do that, we'll see that it has a major effect. It has an effect on the rest of the community. Right? And in our community, we see that as we start to share the Dharma with one another, it starts to reach out, almost like waves, right? Like a tidal wave that's reaching out farther and farther in all directions, spreading in this way. And in that same way, it reaches out to the country, right? And then to the world. It may not be even our intention, right? We may not even be thinking about it, I want to change the world. But we are changing the world with the change of my thought. As I change my thinking, and then I start to look at other people in a different way, maybe they're going to relate with different people in a different way. So societies can have a relationship with one another, and that changes the world. So it becomes almost exponential. The good deeds that I do here can reach out in many, many fold ways out throughout society. And so, with that being said, today, this is the time of this Uposatha days, right? This is one of those occasions, the time of the moon. And what did I say about these days? It's the days where we try to intensify our practice, intensify our commitment, our wish to understand more. So this is a wonderful day to start our practice. Look at what is our practice? Trying to focus on sutra recitation, going back to the fundamentals, doing something simple, just reciting that sutra each day, morning and evening. As I do that, I start to connect more with the spirit and the mind of the Buddha. And as I do that, I start to create more and more better relationships. So let's keep that in mind as we try to create those good relationships throughout the week.